Good evening. My name is Mary Maslowski. I'm the chair of the Historic District and Historical Commission. I'd like to call to order our meeting for Wednesday, March 20th, 2019 at 6 p.m. here in the Don B. Griffin Room at 732 Main Street in Harwich. The first order of notice, as required by law, we're notifying you that the town may audio and video record this meeting. If any person intends to audio or video record the meeting, we ask that you inform the chair at this time. Hearing none, then we'll get started with our meeting this evening. We do have a number of public hearings on the schedule tonight. We would ask each of the applicants, when you come up, sit at the table, state your name and address and your position with the applicant. We'll have you give your presentation. The board will then ask some questions, and then we'll open each public hearing up to the public for comments. And again, when the public comes up to speak, would ask that you approach the microphone at the podium, state your name and address for the record so that we have it read into the minutes. So I'd like to start by opening the public hearing for HH 2019-02, Notice of Intent, which has been received for 67 Parallel Street, map 40, parcel W2 in the R-M zone. The application proposes partial demolition at the rear of the house and reconstruct in the same footprint. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2. Cheryl Morgan is owner, Walter Warren Jr. as applicant. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Walter Warren. I'm the owner of $100 Customs, and we've been hired by Cheryl Morgan to renovate her home at 67 Parallel.
Okay. And I believe you have had provided us with
An updated
plan.
set of plans, yes.
So for everyone on the board, you should have received an updated set of plans for you to look at. So if you could just give us a quick overview of your application, and then we'll open it up to the board for some questions.
According to town records, the main house was built in 1878. I inspected, it has actually three additions on the house, two in the back, one on the right gable side of the house. When I inspected them, it's very obvious that the two additions off the back and the addition off the right were not built at the same time. The framing is different. The lumber, instead of being rough sawn, has been plain. So the best I could tell is that those additions were probably added sometime around 1930. Cheryl Morgan is recently bought the house from her grandparents. It's been in the family for many, many years. They bought it from a doctor who, we don't know if he was the original owner, but it's been in the family for a long time, and it has a tremendous amount of sentimental value to Cheryl. In the house is there's a little tiny footprint. When she was 2 years old, she stepped in the paint and then walked across the floor. And if we touch that, we are all in trouble. So, anyways, it's in two phases. The main house is going to be renovated on the inside, and we're going to be replacing the windows. The proposal is for the additions is to take all three additions off. The little 7 by 10 foot addition on the right side not to be replaced, and the two additions on the back to be replaced in the same exact footprint. You'll notice that the new plan that we submitted today makes the roof line exactly the way it was or is right now. The original plan was to make that one roof line, and after a lot of coaxing from us, she went back to two roofs, which I think is actually a good thing. Windows in the house will most likely be Anderson A series with applied grills on the interior and exterior, so the windows will keep that historic look. And we're just looking for your approval tonight to do that.
Okay, so as a reminder for the board, this is notice of intent under our demolition delay bylaw, and it's actually not within the historic district. So we'll open it up to questions from the board.
I
Jean.
don't really have a question, but when I was walking by, it's a great house, by the way. When I was walking by, I did note, so it's the one, as you face the house, the one on the right, the addition on the right is what's coming off.
Correct.
Which you can see from the road, and it sort of sticks out like a sore thumb like that, I think, a little bit. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not
it
cracked.
doesn't look like it belongs there.
It doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't. But I think the back part was really charming. The two additions to the kind of left and the back look really nice. So I think, and that's what you're going to
That's what,
restore.
coming down and
replace
restore. Yeah, like for like, basically. It's
Yeah.
with the same, built-out rakes and soffits. and-
Any other questions or comments? Bob?
Just to confirm, when you redo the windows, you're gonna keep the same pattern, 2/2?
Two over
And
two.
then the 1/1 on the narrow windows?
It's gonna be 2/2.
Okay.
Yeah, this is, the architect who drew the latest, this is the third architect on this.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Brendan?
Just the change in the plans, so the 3-pitch stays in the back, so the 11-pitch, 3-pitch.
Correct.
Okay. That was my question.
Nothing?
Julie, any questions? Mr. Bradley, any questions?
Just a comment that the change back to 2 roofs is, I think it's very important. I think it's a very good change.
We're happy with it.
Was there a problem with that, just out of curiosity, because you must be losing space?
On the old plan, they were losing ceiling space. And somehow the architect talked her into that one roof line, which we didn't like. And so it took a while, but
Any other questions or comments? Angelo?
No, I'm good. I like what I see on it.
All right. Hearing no other questions or comments from the board, we'll open it up to the public. If anybody would like to speak in favor or speak in opposition? Anyone? Hearing none, then the chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
So, Bob Doan has made a motion to close the public hearing. Jean has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Then the chair would entertain a motion at this time on the demolition delay.
I move that we allow the proceeding with the alterations and demolition as specified in the presentation and plans.
Okay, so there's been a motion to allow the,
Second.
motion to allow,
Almost until I say.
to allow the application and to move forward with the demolition and rebuild as described. Motion's been made by Mr. Doan, seconded by Mr. Lowney. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries unanimous.
thank you.
Thank you very much. We will let the building department know, and you'll be able to get your demo permit.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
Quick.
Okay, I'd like to call the second public hearing to order. It is HH 2019-03. It's a notice of intent that has been received for 52 Parallel Street, map 40, parcel F7 in the R-M zone. The application proposes to remove side entrance door and re-side, remove rear window and replace with French door, add new entrance door to mudroom, and remove side concrete steps. The application is pursuant to the Code of Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Ricardo Spezzafero and Paul Peterzo as owners applicants. Good evening. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Alex Ranney, I'm representing Paul.
Okay?
Paul Peterzo, I'm the owner.
Okay, great. So, if you could just give us a quick overview through, going through the application for the board, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Pretty simple project. We're just trying to put a new entrance in the back where I think it's pretty hard to see from actually any public way unless you've got some binoculars from Main Street there, which I wouldn't suggest. So we're putting a new French door in the back to try to keep that looking like the rest of the house as far as the way the lights are. We actually went and purchased an older door that would match the style of the house that's there now. And then just removing a door on the side where the kitchen remodel is taking place out in the front. And the door that was going to be entering into the mudroom is actually not happening at this time. So we're just removing that door and finishing the wall, so. Which actually adds a little more symmetry to that wall with the windows, the way they're laid out. The door's kind of out of place. We think it'll make the whole thing look a little nicer.
Okay, any questions from members of the board?
So,
Jean?
so yesterday I walked by and I could not see anything from Main Street. But I was noticing that it looks like the side door, where the side door was, that's what you're enclosing now. So I was trying to remember where,
That's the picture you've got.
so on that, so as you face the house, the only other door then is the front door.
That's
Is that
correct.
Okay,
Well, just to be clear, right
Yeah,
now, that's.
right
the
now,
case,
that's the only
yes.
one.
okay.
So the door that is going into the kitchen, that we're actually relocating that exact door as per the drawings that were submitted.
Yep.
So it's basically moving, it's moving to a right angle of where it is now. So you'll still have a door onto the porch off of the mudroom.
Oh, I see, so it'll
Yeah.
just come
Yep.
in a different place, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I
So
was
there'll
trying
be,
to
to
figure
answer your question, there'll be two front-facing doors.
out. All right,
Yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
one of them will be set right now.
Okay.
and then the French
Okay.
doors go
In the back,
back here?
to the right. Where
Yeah,
that
the
window is.
furthest plane away,
Okay,
so.
okay.
I think in this,
Oh, this one.
if you look at it versus the picture.
Right,
Right.
Okay.
thank you.
So just the clarification for me, I'm looking at A5, so this is your second, this is your new door.
Correct.
Which is the old door.
Relocated, yes, just to make it.
New to you door. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Mr. Doan?
Yeah, that's currently wood siding, or is it?
Clapboard. Yeah,
It's what?
it's clapboard.
Clapboard, yeah. And you're filling in where you need to.
Yeah, we'll match it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Great.
And it'll be painted white.
Yeah.
I believe it's 3-inch courses right now, so.
The stairs to that door are gonna be rebuilt also, the stoop and everything?
Well, what we're doing, we had looked at taking them out and dropping the door down, but we're now not touching the stairs.
Okay, so.
We're gonna add, well, actually, we're leaving the stairs, but we're gonna face them and kind of fix them up a little bit, so.
Okay. What material are you using there?
Well, right now, they're concrete.
Right.
So we're gonna have to extend a little bit with the concrete and then probably do a bluestone stoop with a bluestone step.
Okay, so the face will still be concrete?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other members of the board with questions? Mr. Lonnie?
You have all those extra.
Nothing. Mrs. Eldridge, nothing? Mr. Bradley?
I'm okay on this.
Mr. Bradley's all set. Anyone else?
All set?
All set? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Steiner. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Doan? Mr. Doan is seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, it's unanimous. So then the chair would entertain a motion on the issuance of demolition permit.
Can I make it? I make a motion that we accept the,
I wouldn't.
okay.
Oh.
That's
I
why I
wouldn't
asked.
because he's an alternate.
That's why I asked.
And we have a full board tonight.
Tried, boys.
I'm like, I wouldn't.
Any, does anyone have? That's okay. No, you can still vote. I just,
Okay.
and I could be wrong on that,
I
but
didn't know what my
I'll
status was.
double check.
Okay.
All right, so
Yes.
I'll move that for HH 2019-03 at 52 Parallel Street, we allow the demolition and rebuild as specified in the plans and as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to allow. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Steiner's made the motion. Mrs. Eldridge has seconded. Do I hear any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the application as presented?
Aye.
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 Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries and it is unanimous.
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen.
You're welcome. We'll let the building department know. The next matter before us is public hearing for HH 2019-04. Again, it's a notice of intent which has been received for 71 Pleasant Street, map 14, parcel W2 in the R-M zone. The application proposes to switch out a window to a door, replace 2 windows at a rear for a slider, a portico over a new entry door, add dormer in rear roof to make space, to add slider and relocate window in later additions. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Timothy and Jean Kelly as owners applicants. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson. Attorney Bill Crowell from Harwich Port. I'm here representing Jean Kelly, seated beside me, and her husband, Timothy Kelly. And pretty straightforward, I think, petition. They're looking to, as you said, change some windows, a door, and add a portico, all as shown on the plans. Are they listed on the National Registry of Historic Places or the Massachusetts Register of Historic Places? No. Is this building directly associated with one or more historically noteworthy persons other than Mrs. Kelly, or events with the political, cultural, economic, or social history of the town? Not to her knowledge. Does it possess particular architectural value or significance as representative of a recognized architectural style or period, or due to the method of construction or materials used by virtue of association with a historically noteworthy architect? Not to her knowledge. Are we on the historically significant buildings register that you folks have? Yes. The assessor's records say 1890, I believe. So that's why we're here. But they also says heavily altered. Now, I think that's a euphemism for, there's been a hodgepodge of additions and changes made over the years, all before Mr. and Mrs. Kelly bought it last June 1. So they're not responsible for any of that, and they're looking to spruce it up a little bit. They found some rot here and there, and it's not, with all due respect, I know the board disagrees with my opinion sometimes about what looks historical or not, but I don't see this as, the exterior of this house as looking anything like 1890, to me. Maybe Mr. Bradley,
Oh, don't do this.
but it certainly looks just kind of traditional 50s, 60s Cape Coddy to me. But that's why we're here.
Understood. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Lowney, nothing? Mrs. Eldridge?
Nothing.
Mr. Bradley?
Well, this is a very rare example. No, I don't have any comment right now.
All right. Mrs. Steiner?
No, I walked by this one too, and I kept looking to see if I could find something that looked like it was a hidden gem, but I didn't see anything.
We've been looking. We've been looking as well. Haven't found it.
Mr. Dillon?
No, no comment.
I went by the site and I was at a loss for words.
Yeah,
I didn't know I moved here.
yeah, and I'll type in my 2 cents worth. I agree. It unfortunately no longer looks like probably what it did back in the
In
day.
its day, yeah. And you asked, you and I talked briefly, and they're replacing basically like with like.
Okay. So, having no further comments from the board, this is a public hearing. Are there any comments? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Mr. Doan has made a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lowney. Any comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, it is unanimous. And then, with respect to the application before us, is there a motion from the board? The chair would entertain a motion to approve the application as presented and issue a demolition permit for the property located at 71 Pleasant Street.
Also moved.
Motion's
And
made by,
Now that you
I'll
said it all.
second.
motion's made by Mrs. Steiner, seconded by Mr. Doan. Any comments by members of the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. We'll let the building department know.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Welcome. Okay, that was 4. Okay, moving right along.
I know.
I'll call the next public hearing to order. It is HH 2019-05. It's a certificate of appropriateness, which has been received for 711 Main Street, map 41, parcel D8 in the C-V zone in the Harwich Center Historic District. This application, the application proposes to demolish the circa 1970 gasoline station shed and construct a 2-story mixed-use commercial structure that includes 2 dwelling units. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 6, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Elite Basil trustee, et al., owner, Samuel Patel, applicant. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Madam Chairman, my name is Howard Cahoon. I'm an attorney with offices on 33 Old Colony Road. With me tonight is Samuel Patel, who's the petitioner here. We've been here before, as you know. We hope to come back and have better success. We've met with neighbors and some other people that have been in opposition. And as a result of these meetings, we've reduced the size of the structure by 1,000 square feet, from 4,400 to 3,400. The building is 66 feet along Main Street, and I think that promotes the walking, that promotes the village concept, and that's in keeping with the 2009 Cape Cod Commission report. We've eliminated one of the former gas station's curb cuts, That's going to allow 2 additional parking spaces on the street, which won't necessarily affect us or what we need to produce, but it will free up a couple more spaces, which I think will be good for parking in general, maybe 3 spaces. The depth of this building is 54 feet, exactly the same as the Ruggies building to our left. There'll be a good 30 feet behind the building before it drops off, so it will allow for the parking and so forth. And I don't think that there'll be a need for a retaining wall. I think there'll be some on-site excavation for perhaps the basement, which will be used in that area, gradual at worst. I think that it'll work out fine. We've moved away from the rear of the lot in hopes of satisfying any of the neighbors on Parallel Street that live in the residential area in terms of noise or closeness and so forth. And we've had some good results, I think, in that respect. The design of the building before was always said to be not in harmony with what's there presently, the Greek Revival architecture. This, I think, mimics the Greek Revival. It's 30 feet in height. It's about, I think, the same size as the tile workshop. Ruggies is a higher building than that. But we've hooked the two together, and I think it picks up the Greek Revival, the tone and the harmony, and it fits in very well. And I hope that we can see it as an improvement, obviously. That goes without saying. But I think it's compatible and a nice design. As you can see on the side, we have a nice entranceway that picks up the dental work on the roof and so forth. Anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm sure you've had a chance to review these. You may have some questions.
I would just ask, you might want to just put those, if you
Yeah.
can prop them up in front of there actually is an easel, then hopefully the public can see what we're looking at.
Thank you.
You can do one up and one on the floor, maybe. Okay, sure. And then people can hopefully see them. All right, so we'll start with any questions, comments from the board. Mr. Lowney, you want to start us off?
Sure. I wasn't here the first time around, but I did sit in on some of the meetings. And definitely impressed with what you brought here today. It seems you did listen to all the feedback you got, so I give bravo for
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
To me, it looks great, the roof pitch, the size taking up more frontage, I think that was important. The buffer zone that you have in the back and trying to work out the topography and how it's gonna be. There's a lot of questions concerning that. And I think, this is more of a complete set of plans than what you had before.
Thank you.
So I think it's a great start to the second step here. So,
Anyone else? Mr. Dillon?
Excuse me. Just on the landscaping plan, it doesn't say anywhere you're gonna have irrigation system installed. It doesn't say on the
I
plan.
don't think so. I don't think so at this point. Maybe,
Okay, so,
what's that?
yeah, so how are we gonna maintain
Well-
the grass and the shrubs? They do require watering.
We're gonna have it, we just don't have it on the plan. It's gonna be
He tells me,
landscaping company.
he tells me that we're going to have it.
Oh,
It's just not on the plan.
It's not on the plan, because the
You don't
landscaping
see-
company will,
You don't see that, I guess, so.
right.
But you're right. I mean, we couldn't run hoses across the parking lot and have
Right.
a sprinkler and
No,
so forth,
yeah.
and we're not gonna go out there and hold the hose. So, yes, we need to keep the grass green. It's gonna be a centerpiece in how it's centered.
Right. Don't have
Anything
any other
else?
questions.
Yeah, I wasn't here,
Angela.
I haven't heard these before, and I think it was great. But the couple of comments I had is, no comment or notes have been made regarding the under canopy lighting, how that's gonna be done, handled. There is there is pedestal lighting, but there's no comment about how the underside of the canopy is gonna be lit. What kind of lighting and the other question I had was, I don't see any trees of substance or significance along the streetscape. These larger trees are really back on the side of the parking, but nothing along the streetscape to soften it along the sidewalk. And I would like to suggest that maybe something, maybe a 3 or 4 inch caliper tree closer to the sidewalk to soften that edge, so it's just not the building against the sidewalk.
I think that's reasonable and something that we'd be glad to do.
Yeah, something indigenous, maple or something that is indigenous to the area,
Yeah.
but a good size, a 3 or 4 inch caliper.
It would further promote the village concept. This is the tear sheets relative to the architecture designs down there.
Okay, thank you. So the cans, but it's not gonna be like daylight out there, it's gonna be well lit, you know, because it's residential, commercial.
Yes.
We'd like to see, I'd like to see a little softer look to it, rather than a hard look. Those other lights are great, they're very period-based, but the canopies are really overlit a lot of times. Okay, just a comment.
Good, thank you.
Mrs. Steiner, any questions, comments?
Just thank you for listening to us and to everyone who had comments during the other times that you've been here, and for taking the initiative to go out and talk to neighbors. I mean, it shows this design is good.
Good.
Thank you.
Mr. Bradley? Mr. Bradley, are you actually in a butter? Do you need to recuse yourself?
Oh, I have to shut up, don't
I didn't think of it until I just looked at you. So you can sit in the audience, and you can speak as a neighbor.
Yeah.
How's that?
You have to leave.
Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry, Bob.
Do I get a chance to spot off?
Yes, you
Yes,
can.
you do.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna ruin this thing.
My fault, I should have reminded him.
Thank you, Mary, I forgot all about it.
Sorry about that, sir. Mrs. Eldridge, do you have any questions or comments?
I just like the new design of it. I think it fits in better. And I would, piggyback on Dean's, just listening to what, this board had said before.
I think it's going to fit in very well with the Three Sisters and all the other Greek revivals. They're everywhere in the village. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
And to have the apartments upstairs is nice also, for the housing.
No, I had one question. It looks like you've fully designed your interior space now, which I think was one of the concerns that we had initially, that we weren't too sure with windows and doorways and access. So from the look of it, that's fully designed. You know the layout of your space, and you know the layout of your apartments. And I too do appreciate the fact that you spoke with the neighbors and that you tried to keep it
Away
so
from
that you won't need a big retaining wall in the back, because that was another concern that I had towards the end of the last application, just not knowing what that was gonna look like on the site and from the street. I do too appreciate the new roof pitches in the front. It does look like it mirrors the other Greek Revival buildings, so thank you for that.
Could I ask one other question?
Sure, Mrs. Steiner.
I did have a question when I first looked at this, and I just forgot it, but one of the things we had talked about was keeping the windows clear, and it looks like you've been able to do that, which is great. So my question was, if you face it, so it would be the east side of the east sidemost window. Are those tables and chairs, or? I was trying to figure out what that was along the front.
Within the building, you mean?
Yes.
What have you got next to the doorway?
Yeah, we have,
Right here?
yeah.
Yeah, that would be a place where you could have a cup of coffee.
See, I
and-
think that's great.
meet with somebody.
Because people can walk by and will see that, and I think that really contributes to the streetscape.
And
So
you're going to
that's
bring more
really
people
good.
into our store.
I think that's great.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board at this time? Rachel?
I don't see, I don't see, and I hope I don't see them later, is bollards, protected bollards like Cumberland Farms has done. They put those bollards out in front. Are you,
What is it, what's the ball?
it's a,
You mean the
Like a
cement, you mean
Volley
the cement
column.
post?
Well,
it's a short column that prevents cars from coming in through your door or window, crash and grab.
Do you think we should have them? I mean, it's sort of.
No, I would,
Not very aesthetically pleasing.
no, they're not, and I was gonna say, if you entertain that, I'd rather see a form of planter. You know, the bollard is hidden within the planter, and it's landscaped.
That's a sneak attack. Okay, thank you. No, we don't play it now.
Excellent, okay.
Any other questions from the board at this time? Hearing none for the moment. Mr.
I'm
Lonnie?
good.
Okay, hearing none for the moment, we would open it up to the general public. If there's anybody that wishes to speak in favor of the application, would ask you to step forward and state your name for the name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Joan McCarty. I live in Harwich Port on Doan Road. And I've been very active in the town for about 20 years now. And I want to tell you, I've gone by that gas station so long, and it has been so miserable. And yes, somebody threw up a few trees. Sorry, doesn't do it. And I have a problem with saying you should have trees in front of a new, beautiful building. You hide things with trees, I think, and you show them off that it's part of our village and something to be proud of. These people have worked so hard, and they're always open. I really think that we ought to work with them to give our town something good to use, good to be able to shop at, and they're kind people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application?
I'd like to make a big in favor, but there was one qualification. How do you handle that? All right.
Next, there's a gentleman at the podium, Bob, so we'll,
Unless you're in a hurry.
he's not going anywhere.
George Stearns, 120 Forest Street in Harwich.
Thank you.
And I've seen a lot of iterations in 75 years in this town on that lot. Right, Al? Sure. This looks great to me, because what is there now is an absolute eyesore. So I personally feel that let these people invest in this town, and it's not going to be a small investment, and let them have this proposal accepted and let it move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Alan Thompson from Harwich Port. I'm a born and raised Harwich resident, so I know the town in an intimate way. Let me just share with you what Bob, you'll recognize as what Harwich Center was like. And on that particular lot that this is going on, this was what was on the lot. There's a gas station, and that used to sit up by the road. And we've moved back to make frontage. And then, this was demolition day of the gas station, and this is your favorite building, Bob.
Exchange.
The Exchange Building.
The exchange, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the,
So I'm kind of bringing you along with us, you know, as to where we are. And I want to know where you were when that thing got put up. Did you rule on that? Huh?
I wasn't
don't
here.
don't think we were in existence.
Wasn't me.
We weren't in
Five.
existence.
Must have been you, Bob.
No.
So, 3 or 4 weeks ago, they had a Howard Center Initiative Committee meeting here, and somebody got up from the crowd and said, you know what, we need a dark fennel. Well, we have an opportunity for a man here that I happened to see the plans on Monday, who is willing to spend some money in Howard Center and kind of address the historic concerns that you can see. This is kind of one of those last hurrahs. You know, we have an opportunity. Let's not let it slip away. It could be a beginning to see more changes, upgrades, and more modern. And the other thing to think about as you move ahead, you know, we've moved up to a new building code, you know, the 9th edition now, which is more stringent, and a lot of things happen to buildings today that didn't happen in the 1800s or late 17s or whatever. So I ask you, after looking at the plans, I think it fits well. It's a Greek Revival design. It's meant for modern day uses without having to trip over anything or anybody. I think they have a big investment here, and then the opportunity to make a change here should not be let go. And I really believe that you should support this 100% and make it happen. And tear down that mess down there. It's awful, awful. So you have the opportunity right in front of you. So, all right?
Thank you, and thank you for the pictures.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Good evening. I'm Ginny Hewitt. I'm at 787 Main Street in Harwich Center, a few blocks down the street. I do work in the historic district, so I probably spend most of my life within these few blocks. It seems like occasionally I get out and all the way down to Harwichport, but mostly I'm right here. But I live and work here, but I'm here representing myself, so I'm not representing any town department or committee. But I am very concerned about maintaining the character of the historic district. I love the historic district, but I'm also really concerned about returning some vibrancy to the center, and this economic development is really important. It needs to be compatible, but we do need to, you know, the center's been in decline for a while. I missed the hearings last fall, so I watched the video, and I only heard, you know, it was hard trying to tell. I didn't see the photographs of what it would look like. But after the Howard Center Initiative meeting that Mr. Cahoon attended, when he saw the renderings that Cape Cod Commission had done in one of their reports about what the streetscape looked like, he took that and they went and did exactly what they showed. Like, I just don't think it could be any better. I was really pleased to see that when I see this. And actually, I have to say, the little, the fence right over the middle part of the building, you know, on the second floor, the library has that too. So they've got all the details. Anyway, but secondly, I wanted to talk about the Battelle family. I first met them when they moved in 12 years ago next to me. And the original homeowner from the 60s had passed away, and so for about 4 or 5 years, it was owned by a couple in upstate New York, I think, and they didn't even come every year. Maybe they were here 3 times, and eventually they sold it, and it was so nice to have a year-round family move in. And not only are they extremely nice and kind and good community members, they're very hardworking, so I don't even know them as well as I could because they're never home, they're always working. And so I think they're just the kind of people that we want here. And I like what Mr. Thompson said about another Dr. Fennell. I hadn't thought of that. That was a great point, because we need people to invest in the center, and this family is willing to do it. I think the store is always clean. The employees are courteous and polite. And I wanted to mention one other thing. Since I've been here 20 years, and we've always welcomed and attracted a lot of middle school students after school. You know, high schoolers are hard to get because they're busy with jobs and all the, you know, sports and everything after school. But middle schoolers are a little tough because they're not in our custodial care. So this is the first time they're without their parents, and they can act up a little bit. And so you go through phases where you have these little cohorts that start becoming a problem. And, you know, but then they mature and, you know, it goes away. So it comes and goes. But the previous owners of the store, the Patel's current store, they would periodically restrict students, and there'd be big signs, one student at a time, they had to leave their backpacks outside and things like that. And I have never seen that here. They treat the students with respect, and when you do that, you know, they'll act appropriately too. And this store, they have an alcohol license, so there's even more opportunity to have problems there, and they don't, because they treat the students well. And I see they treat everyone well with courtesy and respect, and I think they've become part of the fabric of the community, and that is exactly what we want. So to summarize, I think it's a huge improvement over the abandoned gas station, but it wouldn't take much. You know, that's kind of a given on anything, right? But this seems like to be exactly what we want. I've learned a lot in the past few months about economic development and the things that, you know, used to happen here, and the post office moved, and how do you attract that? What will be successful in a downtown now? And there's not that many things. So I think this is great. It really mirrors the design of the Three Sisters, and I think it'll be really successful. And finally, I just want to also say, I want to thank all of you for supporting the CPC funding for the exterior preservation of the library, the project that was just completed, and I think this will be another huge improvement to Harwich Center. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Good evening. John
Good
Elbridge.
evening.
I've lived here in Howard Center for a little while. We won't get into the years. I think it's a beautiful building. I think it's better looking than a lot of the buildings that are there, the more recent buildings. I think this ought to fly very well in Howard Center. It's a great looking building, and I think it ought to be a yes vote by the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bradley. Mr.
Yeah,
Bradley, if you need to sit down, you can step forward if you want and sit in the chair. It's up to you.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna be short. I'm very impressed. It's vastly improved over what we were shown a couple of months ago. And I recommend that we do pass this thing, or that you should do it. I have one observation, which is not a game changer at all, and that's the west and east sides of the building. Not the east side, the west side and the south side of the buildings have a lonely door on the first floor. And one of them services, as I understand it, services the two apartments upstairs. And I don't know whether those are going to be marketed or used by the family or whatever is going to happen there, but it would seem to me a little elaboration on that door might be beneficial to the marketing of those apartments. It's just an observation. It's not a requirement, I don't think, to the success of the building itself. But it would also, I was in observing it, I thought that maybe it would be beneficial to the restaurant next to you. And that's not your concern, but it works its way down and is beneficial to the town in the end. And I'm just suggesting something that would elaborate the doorway, maybe perhaps give a little shelter to somebody putting a key in the lock before they have to go in. I know I have that problem with my own place, that there's no roof shelter or anything. And it doesn't even have to be an enclosure. It could be just a protrusion of some
Brow,
sort.
just a brow. Just to shed some water away from the door itself.
Yeah, just so that you'd have a little or this is just, and I would say this is just a recommendation. It's not going, it wouldn't affect my my opinion of the building now. It is vastly improved. The scale is much, much better. And the attention to detail is obvious. It wasn't there before. So I'm very pleased, and I also am pleased that you took the time to do all this. Thank you.
And just for the record, Mr. Bradley recused himself from the board for the public hearing because he is an abutter. I just want that recorded.
Hello, my name is Pat Stackhouse. I live in the Harwich House condominiums. I've been in Harwich for 22 years. I think this is the most positive thing that I've seen happen to Harwich Center since I live here, except for the library renovations. And I would just hope that there'd be a committee associated with this town that will hold the other owners of property in Harwich Center to the same standard that you're holding these people to. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Hi, my name is Vince Ferry, and I live on 16 Park Street in Howard Center, and I've been there for over 30 years, and I grew up on Bank Street in Howard, so lifelong resident. So I think Mr. Thompson made a good point earlier, you know, where were we when they built that building in the 70s, right? There was really no one overseeing that, and even when that was a business, a flourishing business, it was really just never fitting with Howard Center. So I actually worked there as a teenager at that gas station. So to see it in its current state, obviously, you know, many people have expressed how rough that looks now. But so, you know, this obviously would be a huge improvement. I think that the fact that it's, you know, keeping with the Greek revival and consistent with, you know, the way towns used to be with frontage on the street, I think is really important to bring back the kind of, you know, center of a town that we used to have. The other thing I'd say is that the businesses that they run now is run in such a way that it's very positive, it's very clean, they're very friendly, it's a great business, and to know that entity that would be moving into that building, there's no variable there. We know the quality of the business that they run. And I think it's a win-win not only for the aesthetics of the town, I think it also can kind of jumpstart this Howard Center revitalization that people are looking at. I think this would be a great way to start it. But it's both, it's great for the town, it's great for the business, and I'm 100% behind this, and I'm hoping you all vote in the same manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in favor?
Ed McManus, 41 Parallel Street. I'm a Wash-ashore. I'm a native son of the Golden West. I moved here from the left coast in 2000 when we came back east to look for a place in Harwich. What attracted us to the house we chose on Parallel Street was that the center was walking distance, and I appreciate being in a much more rural atmosphere, but I'm very much a city boy at heart, so being close to services was important. And I think what is being proposed here, the improvements in design are truly appreciated, and I think will fit quite well with the center, but also the type of services that will be provided. The Patel family I've known since they've taken over the business, and they've done a very good job providing for sort of two services in one building, but because of the small space, it sort of limits the possibilities of the service they can provide by having an expanded market with a deli counter. Yay. Place to get a sandwich as you're heading off to work would be great, but it'll allow for a much fuller amount of service in grocery items for the local neighborhood, and that's the sort of services I think we're looking for in Harwich Center to reestablish it. It's no longer, I think, going to be able to compete as the sort of economic center of Harwich serving all needs, but it would be nice if it had some good neighborhood serving businesses like the Patels are proposing, both with the new building and hopefully a spruced up, better laid out, a more extensive liquor store down at the old site. It'd just be a win-win all around.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? Okay, then before we move forward, the board received a letter in favor, so I just want to read it into the record. From Julie Pina, 1J's, Harwich, Mass. 02645. It's dated March 9th, 2019, regarding HH 2019-05, Certificate of Appropriateness. It says, I am in favor of Samil Patel's proposal for 711 Main Street, Harwich Center. This plan meets the zoning bylaw regulations, does not derogate from the bylaw, is attractively designed to enhance the appearance of the area, provides commercial space, and also includes 2 housing units. Mr. Patel's current project shows a building in effect on the spot 50 feet back from Main Street, where historically an old Cape Cod house circa 1850 stood. Plainly, that building in the 1950s and 1960s was George Meservy's garage auto repair shop, as referenced through MACRIS, the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System. I see no reason to deny Mr. Patel's application and trust it meets approval. Respectfully, Julie Pina. So, hearing no one else wishing to speak in favor, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, is there anyone with any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I will turn it back to the board to see if the board has any further questions or comments for the applicant.
I have none.
Hearing none.
Babe,
Yes, Mr. Brett, Mr. Dunn, sorry.
As far as the suggestion on a tree, or the trees on the sides being more up front, can that be part of the motion to accept, or?
So I would suggest if there are any amendments to the plan, like a different planting or
Right.
such, that we would ask to see that updated in the plan.
If I might,
Yeah.
Madam Chairman?
Sure.
We haven't come to grips with our signage, and we expect to come back to you at that point for your approval. I don't know whether it'll be on the building, or be freestanding, or where it'll be, but we'd like to sort of get the building going and make that determination. I think that at that point in time, we can maybe address a tree, maybe here or there, or whatever, and maybe something to add to the portico on the side over the doorway to give shelter as
So my only comment is that any of those changes would be amendments to the certificate of appropriateness. So you would have to file an application for an amendment to it versus a short continuance to the next meeting if it's something you'd be able to address. I would just also like to point out for those watching and those in the audience, this is the first step for this applicant. This application has to go to planning board for site plan approval, and planning board takes a second look at landscaping and the site and the parking and any waivers that the applicant may need. I'm not sure whether you need parking waivers or any of those other items with the current design. So so we're kind of starting the process at this point. But that being said, I would say if we voted it tonight and there were changes that need to be made, they would be coming back. I mean, it's certainly going to be a smaller application, I would say that, right, for a couple of minor changes. And the signage is a separate, is again a certificate of appropriateness for the sign. But I'd open it to the board for discussion and what you're thinking.
I agree with that. I think after planning, they would have to probably come back with just an amendment, but there's gonna be some change
Right.
after that, so I think that's accurate.
I mean, I would like to just move forward with this so he
Okay.
can
I
go.
say,
Yeah.
I plan to move forward as is, and then I'm sure they'll be back in front of
Okay,
us.
so if the board is comfortable with the application that's in front of us and the completeness of the application that's in front of us, then, and is looking to make a decision tonight, then I would suggest that we move to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All right, so Mrs. Steiner has moved to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second?
Second.
Mr. Doan is seconded. Sorry, Angelo.
It's all right.
So there's a motion made and seconded to close the public hearing on HH 2019-05. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor
Aye.
of closing
Aye.
public hearing? Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none. It is unanimous. Not finished yet. So, that being said, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness as presented this evening and as detailed in the application and the plans.
I move that we pass that motion.
All right, so
Second.
Mr. Doan has moved to approve the application as detailed.
I'll second.
Mrs. Eldridge is seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Motion carries. Yay.
Yeah, I know.
And as I said, when and if you need a few changes, let us, we'll see you back. Let's take a 2-minute recess.
Yeah, it's definitely awesome, because it's just.
Well, it is nice.
Yes. I mean,
It was such a switch from last time.
Let's just take a 2-minute recess so that people can
Yeah.
leave and we can resume the rest of our meeting. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
he's gonna talk.
I had no problem with you talking. None whatsoever. So we're just in a 2-minute recess until Mr.
Sounds good.
Kyriakides comes back. We'll call the meeting back to order. Thank you for your patience. The next public hearing on our agenda is HH 2019-06. It is a certificate of appropriateness, which has been received for 729 Main Street, map 41, parcel D1-2, Macris ID HRW.36, in the C-V zone and the Harwich Center Historic District. The application proposes for installation of typical bagged ice merchandiser at the rear of the building. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 6, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Danny Mace Caruso,
Yes, but not me.
trustee as owner, and Tanios Nohra, manager as applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You are here to put in a
Yes,
bagged ice machine.
it's gonna be in the back, like showing in the picture. Back about 5 or 6 feet from the road. And it's gonna be white, like the building.
I have it. I don't know that I,
Yes, it's
Yeah.
not that. So,
It's at the gas station.
I don't have that attached to mine.
oh, it's there.
No, I'm just gonna look in this one, it's fine. Just looking.
There you go.
Okay. So does anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
It's gonna be visible from the street?
Yes, Bank Street.
But not from Main Street.
No.
No,
From,
Bank Street.
Bank
From
Street, yeah.
Bank
Bank
Street.
Street.
How's the noise on this thing? Is it going to be?
There is no noise, sir.
No noise?
No.
I'm just trying to get my bearings. The pumps are up here, correct?
Yes,
The pumps are here?
yes, ma'am.
And this is down,
Yes.
where people
So it's
park their
gonna be
cars.
about in the back, you know?
I'm gonna give you a minute to try and see it. So it's gonna sit right in front of the propane tank, more or less.
The,
Or
or hide the prop.
it's gonna
To
hide.
hide the
Gonna
propane
hide
tank.
The propane tank, yeah, for
Next to
the
it.
generator. The propane tank generator, yeah.
Is the propane tank, will it still be serviceable and accessible?
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's close from the, it's stuck on the, close to the building. The
Yeah.
propane tank is to the parking.
Any questions?
It's far from the
Or
propane
comments?
tank.
I just had a comment. It seemed that it made sense to me because people go to fill up their tanks with propane and then they can get ice at the same time.
Exactly, yes, ma'am. I'm trying to that if he's gonna
Yeah.
fill the it's propane, he can grab his ice also.
I didn't know you could fill propane there.
That's what that is?
That's not, you're not filling propane though, that's for the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, that's
that
for the-
one.
That's for the building, they fill the tank, that tank for the building's use.
For the
Got
building.
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
for
you
the
can also-
generator, there is small
Right.
generator and
Okay.
next to the
Okay.
office.
Okay.
So this is the tank, propane tank, this
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
generator.
can't do that.
But the
I
big
figured you could do
propane
that.
tank is in the
But I
back.
didn't know.
Yeah,
right?
that's hidden down behind fencing
Yeah,
for
okay.
refilling.
Do you fill propane tanks?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
You do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have 1,000 every year.
I didn't know that. I never realized
I
that.
didn't know.
Yeah.
Brendan just told me.
Very convenient.
Oh, I didn't know
Is
that.
it, is this the tank that fills the propane?
No,
No, that's the other one.
Oh, okay.
the other one, the big
Okay,
one.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
1,000, I think, 1,000 gallons or something.
Okay.
like that.
Now I know what's
Is this a historical building?
It's
Built in
old.
1850.
Yeah, it's an old gas station, yeah.
It's old.
I mean, it's more than 100 years old, the original building. I think 1850.
So just for clarification for everyone, it's a certificate of appropriateness because it's it's getting added to the site in the historic
Right, in the
district.
historic district. Here's the other,
Yeah.
that they fill way down there.
Yep. This is probably the original building here. So this is the building here.
I will say, it is visible from the street. which is our purview in the historic district. From my perspective, seeing a propane tank versus seeing an ice machine doesn't really bother me either way. It's
Not pretty.
one or the other, so.
Well, it's something you'd see at a gas station.
So, and it's something I would expect. Any comments?
Well, we had an issue with the AT&T, with Verizon, about them putting the fence up so we don't see the vent. You know, so sometimes.
Well, it was because they had to put a fence up.
Right, but I'm looking at this, is it possible to add a little wing wall off the building to sort of screen that from the street, but it's still serviceable and accessible? Just a small knee wall.
So turn it to the building, put it to the back of the building.
Yeah, bring it 90 degrees off the building, something about 4 feet long, the machine isn't really visible, but when you go in there, you can clearly get access to it and service it. But it's not an architectural element of the community.
Is that something you'd be able to put up a small fence? Do you understand what he's talking about?
The fence, hide it by
Just from the
fence?
street, from the building out, so we don't see the ice machine as the first thing we see.
You don't need
Yeah,
artwork.
I got it, yeah.
You know, just a
Yeah,
screen.
like screen,
Something
like
about-
fence screen.
Yeah, something
So I
about
think if you're,
60 inches high. Just something high enough to hide the machine a little bit, coming
Yeah.
up about, and then
So I
coming up
think
about 5 feet.
I think what he's talking
May I?
about is,
And
yes. Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're talking about just pulling something this way.
You mean if the machine is gonna be here, you need like
Yeah,
screen fence here?
coming off of here.
Screen fence all the
Just a
way from
screen.
the corner here, the building corner?
Just out about 5
Just-
to 8 feet,
Yeah, yeah.
just to cover the machine a little bit.
Got it, yeah, it's easy, yeah.
Yeah. Just a nice board fence,
Of course, yeah.
make it look architecturally pleasing to the building, and you put your equipment behind that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and so just to clarify, you're talking a wooden fence,
Right.
Yes.
not a vinyl fence, just
No, no,
because we're in the
wooden
It's
historic
the,
district.
A cedar fence.
it's like the propane fence, what I have it over in the back. That's
Okay.
gonna be the same.
Any other comments or questions?
No,
No, there is one thing in the bylaws, whatever it is. They mention, I think, cedar fencing in the center. That it's not on the list of acceptable fences. But it could be just clapboards, vertical clapboards. or
Yep, could be,
something.
could be clapboard, yeah, or cedar shingles.
But
It's
in
not
this,
stopping the idea of a fence.
No, just
But
that
there
it's
is something in the
a screen.
In our
guidelines.
guidelines?
Yeah.
which is mean we're gonna,
So we have, the Historic Commission does have guidelines on what's an appropriate material for a fence. And what Mr. Bradley is saying is that the straight cedar fencing isn't one of the guidelines, but there is a clapboard fence, perhaps,
Yeah, I mean,
Not
any
not a
fence.
stockade
a
fence.
stockade fence.
That
Is-
isn't allowed,
That would
is-
not be allowed.
Is not allowed.
stockade.
But a
But
Not
it just,
in the
but just a
historic
flat
district.
board, vertical boards is fine, right?
Yeah.
Painted white,
Yeah.
that would be fine, I think.
Yeah,
There-
not a
there's a
I didn't mean a stockade fence, I meant
Yeah,
boards with a cap,
Mm-hmm.
you know, painted white.
So they have a little fence to the left of the red door. It looks like, I don't know if it's PVC or not, but you do have a decorative fence there, that's what we're talking about. So just the one panel, it could even taper down, so it blends into the property, but we're just talking one panel to block that.
yeah.
Could,
But in this case, which is mean, I need to put sign, which is mean, because the ice freezer, it's written on the ice freezer, it's ice. So which is mean, if I put also the defense like, which is mean, it's gonna hide the machine. So I gotta go.
The sign becomes the billboard in this case. I mean, the ice machine becomes the billboard.
right.
Because it's white, where I think it's not like, if you look at it, you think that it's part from the building, you know, because it's gonna be white. And it's written ice. So when you put the fence, it's gonna hide the machine. And we need to go to a sign.
Right.
I'm
I
trying to
understand.
skip this sign. You know, it's not nice to add sign, if that's possible. Because it's gonna be in the back, back from the board, the building board, more than 6 feet.
So you're saying this, the ice machine is the billboard?
Exactly.
Is the billboard?
Exactly.
Big red letters that say,
Just
Ice.
just white, nothing else, you know.
it's still a machine.
Yeah,
It's still a machine, that's the unfortunate thing.
Ah, okay.
But it's still a machine.
but you could put a sign in front that'd be more like a wooden sign, doesn't have to be wood, but it'd be trimmed or something.
Sure,
That
yeah.
says ice, and I think that would look more appropriate
Historical
than the
look.
metal
Yeah, historical look.
box, yeah.
So you could put it on the fence.
Yeah.
that you're- Yeah.
Well, you
And
could-
it wouldn't
wouldn't
have
you?
to be too big, you just want it big enough you
So
you
everybody can see
from
it.
the
Yeah,
road.
sure,
Yeah.
So, I could say this, my recommendation, I guess my comments for the board, I think from my perspective, the best way to address this then, if he is gonna need a sign, perhaps, we can continue and he can show us a mock-up of the sign, because you would need a sign permit in the historic district as well.
Yeah.
So, so perhaps you can provide if you go to the building department, give them a copy of what you'd propose for a sign that you could put on kind of the board fence that we had mentioned, and if you're willing to do the fence.
Support, yeah.
And we can continue this to our next month meeting, so then your public hearing's still open, and you can just come back. We'll continue it to a date and time certain, and then we can see, a picture of the sign, approve a sign for the historic district, and the fence with the certificate of appropriateness. Is that agreeable?
No problem.
All right,
Yeah,
then,
may I just,
Bob, sure.
and I would like at the meeting to show us what you see as the fence, the board fence, just a kind of drawing of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be it.
Can I show you guys just one real quick
Sure.
item? And I can show it to you as well. You can almost see the fence here. That's the
Oh, yeah,
fence.
yep.
So if it was the same fence coming this way, when you look this way, you'd
Yeah.
have two fences winging off the property.
yep, just as wood, so why don't you
Yeah, I know.
show
See,
everybody,
that's
and
a-
then,
Yes.
See, now
Yeah,
you
see,
can see
that's a
it.
nice fence, yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I knew what you were talking about.
That's what we're talking about. This little fence you have here,
Mm-hmm.
same thing, just protruding out this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
pen is in here somewhere.
The only issue is that that little piece in front of the house looks like PVC to me in that picture.
Yeah.
So, we might,
It has,
So-
it should be wood of
yeah,
some
it should
kind,
be
yeah.
wood. It's similar to that.
But same style.
Yeah.
So, we are currently at March 20th, so the third Wednesday in April is April 17th. Would you be available to come back on April 17th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing until Wednesday, April 17th, at 6 PM. Do I have
I'll
that
move to
motion?
continue the public hearing.
So, Mr. Doan has made the motion to continue. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Steiner has seconded. All those in favor? Hearing any in opposition? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously to continue to April 17th at 6 PM. I would just ask you to sign one sheet of paper for us so that we've got the continuance in the record here. Let's see.
Congratulations. That's great. I was wondering where you
Yeah,
disappeared.
I bought the business.
I wonder where you disappeared to.
No, I disappeared in United Gas in Hyannis.
In Hyannis, right.
I am the cook over there, Mr. Kebab.
That's right. I know that. Excellent kebabs.
So there, this is just
About different.
about the continuance. So they'll, we'll have the assistant send you a copy of this, and just if you can, provide them with a mock-up of, picture of what the fence will look like, and a mock-up of what, you propose for a sign to go on the fence for the ice.
Can I take a picture for this fence and apply it with the application?
Yeah.
You
Sure.
You show it to me? Yes,
Sure.
in front of the door?
Sure, we would just say that if that fence actually is vinyl, that we would ask that this fence actually be wood.
He would, but same
this-
detail.
okay.
It looked
I
like
get a
that.
feeling,
Okay.
just
Same
based
style.
on
Like
looking
that,
at
yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it looks like
Okay,
PVC,
okay.
so,
Okay?
or
Okay,
vinyl.
thank you.
So we'll see you on the 17th. Thank you
you.
very much for
Thank
your
you.
patience tonight.
Thank you.
It's been a long meeting. Okay,
Oh, we're
so,
not even close to the CPC meeting. We have a
We're
long
not.
time to go.
but this is historic, Bob, come on. So, the next item on our agenda, yes,
So tomorrow morning I'm fill application or just?
so you can just, you can,
Just do everything and.
you can do that thing and tell them that you're amending your current application
All right.
for the continued meeting, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, I will make it quick. All municipal employees are required to retake the ethics test. Supposed to be by April 1st. If you haven't signed the sheet that I have with me tonight, please see me after the meeting so that you can sign it. And then when you do have your certificates, you can either email them to me or bring them into the town clerk's office so that she can record them, so that we're all good to go.
Do we know?
I just took mine.
Bob and Angelo, you're both okay because you took it in December.
Yeah.
If anybody took it earlier than December, we all need to take it over again.
And where do we go to look at
So
that again?
it is, if you go to mass.gov, which is the state website, go to the State Ethics Commission,
Okay,
and then as you scroll down their page, there's a button that says ethics training.
okay.
And you will do the ethics training for, first it says for municipal employees, and then it will ask you if you're a regular employee or a Board of Commission member.
Okay.
You'll
I
do the one for the
remember
Board
that,
of
yeah.
Commission
Okay.
member.
Great, thanks.
All right, so,
Do I have to do it? I had it last November or something, didn't I?
did you have to do it again?
Do it again?
Yes, sorry, Bob.
To clarify, do I have to do it again too, even though I did in December?
You don't, because you both took it in December. Bob was before December.
Okay, I was wondering
unfortunately.
what Bob you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, Bob.
Sorry, Bob.
So,
Do you want me to take it for you? Is that what you're asking?
I didn't hear that.
I flunk it every time, you know.
I didn't hear that. So, the next item on the agenda is to review the minutes from February 20th, 2019. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes?
Mhm.
Missing it out in my packet. These are the minutes from February, last month.
They were in what was mailed, but I don't. Oh, here they are,
Yeah, draft.
right.
So did anyone see anything that they wished to see changed? This was the Verizon application, if I recall.
Right.
Nope.
If everyone's all set with the minutes, I would entertain a motion to accept and place them on file.
Motion to accept.
Motion made by Mr. Lowney to accept and place on file. Do I have a second? So, second made by Mrs. Steiner. All those in favor of accepting and placing the minutes on file?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries, unanimous. The next item on our agenda is the Zoning Board of Appeals, schedule for March 27th. If there's anything in here that you folks wish to comment on, I didn't see anything that jumped out at me that was in the historic district.
This one.
Well, Cheryl
We've
Morgan.
already
Yeah.
talked about that, right? 67
Yes,
Street.
that was there, yep, so we've already addressed that, so. If there's nothing that the board wishes to comment on to the zoning board of appeals, the chair would entertain a motion to accept and place on file.
So moved.
Mr. Jones made a motion to accept and place on file. Any second? Mrs. Eldridge is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, it's unanimous. So we still have on our agenda a continued discussion of the demo delay bylaw. I don't know if we want to postpone that for another meeting. So we'll schedule that for the next meeting. Bob, would you like to give us a CPC
Yes,
update?
I would like to give you an update. So at the last CPC meeting, everybody had to present or discuss where they were in their funding that had been allocated, but, and give an update. And we have not spent any money in the last year on the funding, the 30,000? 20,000. That was allocated to us, other than Mary did explain at the last meeting about looking at the dates, or looking up deeds or whatever. But they have only given us till May or June?
They give us 3 months, June.
June, that we have to come back with a plan if we're gonna spend that money, otherwise we will lose it, basically.
So, what we had talked about was what we had talked about last meeting, with some of us kind of taking some items off the list and trying to do some deed research. The list is on our webpage. I intended to print it tonight and I forgot to, but what I can do is take a few pages, highlight the ones that are, say 19, probably the last 10 years or so, 1915 and a little bit older than that, and see if there are any, highlight them, see if we want to take a look at them and see if there's anything that, that we think we should look into further and start that way. There was some skepticism, to say the least, as to whether our, this plan was going to work. But
Right.
We did get them to give us a little bit of time to try it.
But the concept is to, as I understand it, is to look at the ones that are close and cross-reference it with the deed, or first the town card?
I would say the town cards, and then if
First.
the card doesn't say anything, you
Doesn't
look to the
agree.
deeds. Correct. So, and what I noticed on the list, when I looked at it, is it gives you multiple dates. So it says what the building date is, what the date that's in Macris, what the property card says if it has that information. It says what date we put on it when we did our list. So you can, some of them stand out that you can see, like it might say 1850 versus 1920, or, we might say, the building card might say 1900, and the Macris date says 1890. So there are some discrepancies on those columns that are side by side that you can kind of glance and look at. So what I will do is, is printed off. It's about 35 pages. So what I will try to do is, we didn't have a color printer in the office, and I do think they have one upstairs. So I'll ask if they can print us one in color, and I'll try and highlight some of the ones that jump out at me, and I'll scan them to you folks, and then we can all kind of eyeball them and see if there's any that we think are worth doing the deeper dive into. And I think some of it may be confirming what those dates are on there. You know, to Bob's point, you know, where you have that discrepancy, double check the property card, and then, you know, the records are Barnstable County Registry of Deeds, and usually you can take a look at them online.
Yeah, does everybody know how to get that?
But the only thing at the registry, though, is that you might see like a deed out there, but you don't know if there's a house on there or not.
Well,
right, so
mean,
when
that
you're
doesn't-
when you're looking at deeds, the example I go back to is the 19 Schoolhouse Road one that was put in at 1915 and was actually 1940s. And the way it showed up when you read it was the deed into the family said the land, and then there was a mortgage deed from the bank that said securing the land and the property thereon.
Okay, yep.
You're not always gonna find that. It's kind of, you know, it's a little bit like fishing to see if there's if you can find anything.
Because your mortgages now don't say if there's you can do a land loan.
Right, exactly. So, it may not work, it may work. We've had good luck with the ones that have come forward because they've had something like that to be able to point to. And sometimes it's just the property record card downstairs. I will say that the assessor's office may or may not have the deeds that old. So if you're having trouble, you know, if we do decide to go this route and you can't seem to find it online at Barnstable, they might be able to access it downstairs. So if we do use downstairs, I would just tell them that you're a member of the Historic Commission and you're doing some work for the board, and see if you can ask for some assistance and get a
I'm on
copy.
the registry site almost every
Yeah. So,
Is there a picture of every house too? On all of them?
I believe there is, but some of the pictures may be older, you know, versus what's there now versus, you know,
I
it
mean-
might not be the pictures get updated, so I don't know whether the older pictures would still be there.
Not the only way, why I mention is that there may be a case where we'll dispute the card.
Absolutely.
Saying that the card's saying it's 1920 and we think it's earlier.
Right.
And then you really want to go look at the deed and see if you can ferret that out.
Agreed.
Like the one tonight, that house on
Oh,
Pleasant
I know,
Street.
I
I
mean,
know, it
gosh,
didn't look anything, yeah.
I don't know
Right, I
if
drove by
there's
it
any
today too.
chance.
And you
I was
lo-
looking
and
for
you
something else.
chuckled,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I wonder
Same
what it
here.
was originally.
Well, it was probably a house that was knocked down and just,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
never updated.
you know?
Yeah.
Someone built a little cottage, then they expanded off that. yeah.
Right.
But you couldn't see anything that
N-
looked
even close.
remotely.
Yeah.
She even said they've been looking for something too, just to find
No, I
something
think-
that,
Yeah.
you know.
It could have, that center portion might have just been a little
Oh, true.
cottage.
So there's a
beach
couple of
cottage.
homes on that street that look like it. There's a couple, there's like 3 or 4, but yeah.
It's a great street, too.
So it may have, you don't know. So, to Bob's point, I will get those out to you, by the end of the week. And then we can take a stab for the next turnaround, see what your thoughts are, and we'll go from there. And if not, then we'd want to kind of put a brief proposal together to see what we would need to hire somebody to do a little bit of research for us. You know, I don't know that it is as detailed as what we did with the original list. It may just be, you know, even a title examiner to kind of run down those.
I'll bet we'll find a lot of them
Those
on the
things.
field cards.
So, so if that works for everyone, we'll start that, but, any other CPC updates besides the historic update?
That was only for us.
So, my only other comment would be if you're talking to people, encourage them to go to town meeting to support the CPC articles, one of which is the $150,000 for Brooks Academy Museum. So, because based on that based on that review, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and, you know, certainly the 150 isn't going to get them all the way there, but hopefully it'll be a start.
But you know, if that starts, and we've got the library, and then we have this new building going in.
Mhm. It's a wonderful
gonna
start.
exciting.
You have
start
two
to
anchors
really look good.
beside
It
this
really
project.
is, the bookends.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would just say that, you know, those need to pass at town meeting, so if you're
Where
talking,
does that money go to, the 150?
Brooks Academy Museum Commission, so it's for, and the way it was voted was 150 to check on the foundation and do some remediation on the exterior.
Some
To
painting
kind
or
of, because
something, right?
the report
Change of
reported some
door.
water damage and some problems with the paint. So, that would be my only second point on CPC.
Is that building that's across the street diagonally from Brooks Academy, is that
The
a
old,
town, that's a town-owned building, or does the
that's a
Harwich
town-owned building,
Theater own
the old rec
No,
building.
it's the town.
It is
It's
the
a s-
town.
it's a sc-
And they-
elementary school.
And they lend it out to the,
Harwich is
No,
right
it's
there,
it's
probably,
leased.
right?
It's leased.
oh, it's leased out?
No, there's a 25-year lease.
Oh, wow, okay.
And
Sorry.
the Brooks Academy Museum is,
A lease.
I don't know, under a lease or at the end of its
Also?
lease
Right.
to the
Historical
Historic
Society.
Society, so,
And a portion of the land or the building itself, I gotta check my notes, but the Affordable Housing Trust, that's one of the parcels that we're looking to bring into the
Mhm.
Affordable Housing Trust.
Are you on the board?
Yes.
That's the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But it's set back a little bit more.
interesting.
It has a connection to the condominiums down in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not a legal right-of-way, is it?
No, but if the town had any imagination, they'd make that into a pedestrian walk.
Actually, there is a legal right-of-way on the other side of the building, straight down the property, down the side of the building. There actually is
On the
one.
far
with the-
side, on the east side.
Yes, yeah, that is where there is a
And that's
right-of-way.
peculiar because it's right next to the building. There's no
Right,
real land.
there's no
there.
space there, yeah.
Any other boarding commission updates? I can say only that planning board meets next week, and there was and will be lots of discussion about the property that we put under the demolition delay.
Yeah.
There was quite an uproar at on the internet and on
Oh, for West Harwich?
over
Yeah.
the West Harwich retail space. So, you know, when I've been questioned about it, my response has been, we did what we could do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And really, unfortunately, we took the extent of our ability to prevent it by imposing the 12-month delay. So there will be more discussion, I'm sure, at the next
So
meeting.
the delay's in effect now.
The
Yes.
delay is in effect now, yes.
And it goes
Until
to
like
It goes through
December, isn't it?
December, I believe.
Yeah.
through this December.
Yes, so that is my only other update for the board.
Which one, what bill was I? don't know.
52, I don't know if it's 52 Route 28 or if it's actually 52 Depot Road
It's next
West.
to the church that's down there.
It's
in
the
West
old
Harwich.
rectory to the
Okay,
church.
okay.
Baptist church there.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's sort of an
You-
Italianate,
Yeah,
Yeah.
down in West
There's a-
Harwich.
Gorgeous,
West Harwich.
yeah,
Yep.
it's a gorgeous.
There's
building.
a proposal to put in a retail building on the property next to it, and they're proposing to kind of put the retail space and knock down the existing building on 52, so.
But it was interesting when they talked about what they had, or who they had talked to, which was like the dollar store and such, and they've got a dollar store right down the street.
different
So
I don't-
that's actually not what he said. Just for clarification, what they had said at the meeting was they didn't know who their tenant would be, and that, but those were some of the tenants that they had in their other locations. So that's all they've said. So,
who's that? You're speaking of?
the applicant, who was before
Who's
the planning board.
tearing it down?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was before the planning board. And I raise it only to comment that, you know, our demo delay has come up at the planning board. So if you see it, you just know that there is an application there for everyone's edification. Anything else? I will do the follow-up with you all with an emailed copy of that list. And then we can go from there, and we will hopefully have the revisions for 729 Main Street at the next meeting. And then hearing nothing else, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Mrs. Steiner has moved.
Second.
All right,
Can I do
Angela,
that?
you can do it.
Can I do that?
I'm not gonna be here, I'm not gonna be here next month. I'm leaving the 12th, I'm back to the 30th, I'm going